Hello everybody, today is my evening demonstration session and I'll be painting some snowdrops. So I have an oak type of background, so that will help me with some of the middle tone for the whole painting. So I'm looking at some leaves, I'm looking at some of the background as an overall tone. And I'm going to start sketching with quite runny paint. I'm mixing some ochre and some violet and quite a bit of water, so it will be quite runny. And I'll start, there are loads and loads of details going to be on a painting, but I'm going to group my flowers and start with some of the key elements for the flowers. For example, I have a group of flowers somewhere here, so I'm going to group them up in a little shape, little rectangular kind of odd shape. I've got one flower that will help me instead of drawing loads of fine details. It might give me, if I need to move something, if I need to change something's location, that will be an easier option for me. So let's find some of the other groups. I've got two flowers somewhere lower here. That would be quite nice. I want to have the flowers quite large. Okay, there are a couple of flowers a little bit squashed on the side. I think I'm going to bring them slightly up and slightly more towards the center. I think that might be a group of them there. And one open flower. So also gives me an opportunity to measure kind of the size. So if that's I ended up with one of these flowers, okay, just double checking that they are sufficient in size. Fabulous. So they do look like big cubist type of shapes. Okay, there's another group of 2 or 3, and all the rest are going to be quite far away, and I might just use some texture to apply them. What I can say, I can see the lovely gentle angle, diagonal line, or maybe the slope of the woodland. I can see some of the trees there. That gives me a nice background. And at the foreground, I can also see some of the obviously stems, but I'll again group them up in big shapes. And that's again will give me an idea how tall some of these leaves are going to be, how big. Okay, maybe even somewhere here. So I'm not counting individual leaves. Okay, where's this one's going to be? Somewhere. Again, another triangle type of upside down triangle. Okay, and that's also gives me an opportunity to create some of the shapes for the floor of this wood. Some of the big leaves, well, the leaves looks quite enlarged because the flowers are quite small, so we can really be on the level with the flowers. Maybe some of the early insects warming up and waking up. So that is, maybe I'll also do a big shape for my overall important flowers. I think that's going to be the top. All the rest is going to be nice textures. That corner looks quite empty. So again, if I'll work into that's leafy type of ground, and maybe above I'll have loads of flowers. Okay, and there will be some line of flowers going across there, maybe something there. So I'm creating that composition immediately. I think that flower could be slightly bigger. So it's got that diagonal slant, and I'll have some vertical shapes here as well to stop it. Maybe some of the shadows will come here as well to balance the whole composition. So that will be my first sketch. Sketch is ready. So once the drawing is finished, I don't need any more line to create further details. I'll start using tone. So my first tone, I'm going to go for some shadows. So I'll mix extra thick violet now and some ochre. I'll use tiny bit of white just to make the paint a bit more bulky and also not transparent. So maybe something darker. This is not going to be my darkest tones, but I'm looking for overall darks. So I want to block and create some of the negative spaces within the painting. So I'm going to use the same color just to find some of the shadows. Let's place some of them in between the leaves. There's a big chunk of the shadow right in front of us. There's some, again, gaps in between. Lovely shadows, and loads of our greens will be in between some of the shadows. So I'm planning my tones. Doesn't matter even if I'm not varying the color. My leaves will support me here. And that was another background color. I could have had some ochre and violet type of tone and color. And then I could have worked with some paler ochres, but I decided on a lighter background today. So maybe my flowers will stay bold and pale. Right, so some of the shadows at the front, I just need to unite them a little as a pattern. Do they look exciting? Do they start to look to supporting each other? I will differentiate them later into more darkness or into more variety of color. But so far, let's keep them as exciting shape. Okay, something heavier on the one side, a little bit more broken down in the middle. Okay, and maybe some more narrow spaces on the left. And let's have a look at the background. Maybe another shape, a bit more broken. But overall, I want to see that as a continuous type of pattern might help me showing the widths where the kind of the whole field of snowdrops is. And I think I'm going to put all my woodland there at the back for all of that color. So I've broken it down into now 2 tones, my initial medium tone, and now I've got the darker version there. Okay, that's good. And now I'll work with some lighter tones. So overall big shapes of the flowers. And again, I'm not going to go far away from these colors. I'll just do a very light version of my kind of violet and ochre tone. I think it's reflecting a bit here. I don't want to go too light. This is going to be kind of the shadow tone for my flowers. Let's just mix it a little bit darker. Let's place it on the board and see if that's the color we want. Yes, so it's maybe a tiny bit darker. Tiny bit darker. So then I can do all the highlights. I want to do the highlights into some cooler colors. So my shadows will stay slightly warmer. So now I can, oops, a bit more too ochre by accident. I can do now overall shapes of the flowers. If they are not going to be as delicate or exactly how I want them at the end, it's okay. I just want to again make sure that I have done the right proportions of them. If I have done the right placement of them, or maybe I need to change their placement because they, as I build up the tones, look a little bit strange or not as pleasant. Okay, so big petals, smaller petals. Some are opened, some are not so opened. Okay, looking at the big shape of them. Again, if I can't see all of the petals or all of the details of them, I'm going to look for maybe a group of petals or maybe just a few strokes, and I can dig deep into the nuances of them later. Okay. I also don't want to lose the larger, more important flowers to a lot of details in the background. Okay, so I've got two big petals, the shorter center. Tiny bit more water, and another one here. I think I quite like the size of them. I think it's working well. So I'm slightly adjusting my composition. So these flowers are, as I said, slightly closer to the ones on the left from them. And this one could be opened up here. Let's have a look. Hopefully it's not going to be interrupting the key flowers here on the right. Okay. It's quite nice. It's turning towards us a little bit more. I think I might keep that one as it is. That's lovely. Okay, quite wide. A different time. Snowdrops open up very differently. At some point, they're quite elongated and quite slender. Then the sun comes out and they become quite bold, and obviously also over the weeks they almost like fluff up their petals and become really exciting. Right, I think I lifted these ones quite high, but I like that. For the moment I'm going to keep them there, and then my other flower is going to group somewhere here at the back. Is that one high enough? Maybe I'll put it deliberately higher. Okay, and I'll just do a tiny bit of dabbing of lights just to show myself where some of the other flowers going to be in tone and how they will start shaping up. So I'm using a flat brush, but I can do some nice curly strokes to imitate that pattern of the petals a little. I probably will paint over it loads of times, but again, those strokes help me to practice before I start doing the actual work. Right, okay, that's looking good. Let's step away for a moment. Now I have a debate between where do I work next. I can go for the leaves, the forest floor, or I can go for some of the greenery. Now I can see that the green leaves and stems are quite dark in their tone. So I think while I've got my warm palette of colors developing, I think I'm going to go for the leaves and just work within my warm palette of ochres, maybe crimson, and change some of the tones just gently. So if I'll go for crimson and orange, sorry, an orange and ochre to make an orangey color. Let's see if I can play some of the fiery colors, maybe just a tiny bit stronger. Okay. Maybe that leaf has been lit up from underneath and it's got a bit of redness in it. Also can see a little bit of orangey red some at the back. So at this stage, I'm looking for color without identifying what it is. I know it's going to be parts of the background and dry leaves, but I'm looking for pattern. Again, that continuous pattern across the floor is good to see that developing. I think I can do all of that one red. Yeah, the flowers are drying much darker, but that's okay. As long as I bear it in mind for later. Okay, that might be enough of some reds. Let's make it slightly more into the violet side. Some of these colors. So I have my violet, some white, maybe I had some ochre in here. Let's do a little bit of that. Let's see. So it'll be just a tiny bit cooler. No, I can't quite see it. It's a different color to my background, but I think it's too light to do anything with it. So a tiny bit more violet and red. And let's try again. Okay, so that's got nice leafy tone. Again, I will go for pattern of some of that violet. So I think I can see those lovely brown leaves. I think it's oak trees, some actually, I don't know what other leaves are there. I think I can see some of the mainly oak leaves here. So when they dry, I've got this beautiful grayish brown tone. Okay, so let's do a little pattern of that color, maybe even fill some of the just empty spaces here. Tiny bit more darker. I'm quite happy working with my flat brush still. Just checking where my strokes come out a bit patchy. Just want to make sure they stay plain for now. Okay, I can do a little bit more dipping into the shape of the flowers, into that carpet of the flowers. I don't want them to be all equal, that white volume of them. But maybe some more gentle here. Okay, so that's nice. I can see already some volume around that block of flowers. Let's put some of the maybe shapes of the trees or gaps between the trees. Maybe some light is there. Okay. And anything in the middle ground. I think in the middle ground here, in the little gaps, I think I need something slightly darker. So I'll go for small increase of tone of violet and red. So maybe that will be my overall central color for the background. This is a nice study of the colors, study and observation of them. leaves, of the flowers, all of that busyness. I'm trying to simplify what's more important. So once I've focused on my flowers and focused on my darker shadows, the in-between tones, even if I vary the color, are not as scary to paint, okay? And I can change, you know, I don't have to go too precise for what it is behind those flowers, how the leaves exactly on the floor line there. Okay, that's compares to my shadow. Let's keep it slightly darker, this corner. I probably can work around it afterwards with some nuances. Okay, that's ended up slightly lighter, but I'll come back to it. Right, any other tones? So I'm going from general shapes and overall general color to unite the whole painting. Okay, that's looking already good. And I think that's a look on the top area of the flowers. They just looks two similar blocks of light. So if I just gently break them down with something, okay, that's good. That's good as well. Right, anything else? Brownie for now. Oh yes, the foreground. I can do that here. Maybe a slight highlight on this corner, as I'll need to work with some highlights to support my leaves later on, sorry, to my flowers later on. So maybe that shape of the leaf will come in now as a nice chunky highlight. And there is another folded leaf is there as well. Let's get this top a tiny bit darker. Okay, right, any other shapes? Right, let's go with some of these ones as well. Let's get some more elegant marks. Maybe a bit more gentle shadow there, and I'll come back to it afterwards. Any other highlights in this area? I think I can see again another lovely highlights. Just the light catching gently. And definitely on this edge of the leaf, I think I'm going to make it a bit more orangey, but light. Maybe a vein going in there. Yes, that's nice. And I think I can do another little highlight. So only once I've got the big shapes, I start to understand, oh, okay, that might be that part of the leaf. Maybe this one's going to be another segment. I don't have to tell the full story, but that already looks quite settled in that sense. And maybe a little more light. So within the tones, I'm starting to find some new highlights. Okay, something there. Maybe a tiny bit more at the back without breaking it too much. Okay, that might be enough for now. And now I fancy to add some more darker shadows. So I've got my medium shadows. I'm still not ready for the greens. The greens could come in quite easily afterwards. But within those shadows, I want to create even darker ones. So I think I'll go for a small amount of black with violet. Just need to make sure that some of the black will be slightly, well, I could see the color, that's first of all, most important part. And secondly, I want to still not make it overly black. Okay, let's find some of the corners. Okay, not much of a difference. Let's make it a tiny bit darker then. Maybe I can even use a small amount of emerald green and violet together. That will make it extra black or dark. Don't have to have it black. Right, let's find some of the shadows. Okay, that's a good one. Just mix my paint slightly better. So I'm preparing for some of the key green leaves to come in here, and they will stay quite dark. So I'll just prepare some of the shadows for them. There will be some lovely gaps between the stems. I can come back with darks later as well and almost define it a little better once the greens are in, but also want to show a bit of depth now. So overall darks unite my colors, the extra darks not breaking it. I could do with maybe a small shadow here, but then I need to be careful not just to look at the photograph as my inspiration, but also think of the painting on its own. Okay, maybe some of these can be part of some of the shadows or veins. Okay. Any other shadows here? I think that's might just balance a few shapes. Right, so the darker tones are now going to be here. Between some of the greens. And again, I'm looking for overall diagonal development here. So maybe I need to balance it with something else here. I can start seeing that some of my darks are looking a bit too similar. So I might need to change them or unite them into groups in a different way. Before that darkness, even if I don't know where it might be going, I think that could be a slightly wider shape, at least for now. So I've got that similar shape with these similar shapes, but now I'll break them down with the greens, and there might be one will be more green and one will stay much darker. got one shape and another shape, so of a similar type, but maybe the weight-wise could be distributed differently. Maybe that section will have slightly more lighter tone. Maybe I can reduce it as part of that development. Maybe those darks are not going to be as wide. So that's my analysis for that. Okay, nothing else here. And I think I can put another maybe vein here. This will need to be a tiny bit darker. Just a rhythm of lines. As I started to have some lines in the front, I also want to have a little bit of a rhythm of lines somewhere else. Lovely. Okay, let's maybe stop. But this extend it a tiny bit more. And maybe stop at that. So I'll still work with my medium-sized flat brush because I love the angles it gives me so far. And now if I'll start doing the stems and leaves for the snowdrops, those are going to be beautiful elongated strokes the flat brush can give me. So I have some emerald green and some ochre, but I'm going to start with some of the darker tones for my greens. So even if the ochre is present and gives the color a little bit more of a sap green color instead of the emerald green, I think I'm gonna do a dab of red into that. Again, that keeps it quite into the sap green. And I want it to be darker. I want it darker than my actual green here. So if I add some violet with it, it will not only make my green dark, okay, I can even go for a tiny bit of that more, but it will also bring it very close to my group of my colors. Okay, so that's a nice green. So that's my darkest green. It doesn't matter with acrylics if you wanted to paint lighter tones or darker tones, as long as you bear them in mind. With watercolors, we tend to start with lighter colors and build them up to darks. With acrylics, we can go either ways. Right, so let's find some of the darker tones for our stems and leaves. I'll probably put a few lines first just to feel the color before I'll fill in shapes of color. If I'll go over some of my flowers, that's okay. There's some big chunks of darks. I can always bring my flowers at the front over the leaves. I want to keep some of the violets, but again, I know I can paint them back if I need to. Let's do some the tops, the flowers. how they all held together, all the petals held together. Let's maybe find a nice diagonal, how the flowers are leaning. I can also paint lighter greens on top of my darks, so I don't have to just look for the darks. I can do more strokes. Okay, something's here. I haven't finished the central area, but I want to get a little bit of sense of balance of this green elsewhere. But lovely light left in some of the gaps, already creating that woodland feel where the light is not perfect. It changes depending on how cluttered the trees, how much light is escaping, how many shadows we have. Okay, I need to be careful not to overdo my leaves and also not to repeat too many similar strokes. Okay, this one's going to have a nice head there as well, but its stem is somewhere else. Okay, very gentle, nice build up. I think I can do another leaf here. Doesn't matter if it's belong to that flower or if it's somewhere else behind. And it's also good because my acrylic's already dry here and I can work over the shapes without worrying of smudging them, the shadows, or if I wanted to wash something off, I can do that. Here I'm trying to make the flower so the stems not to go in a line. Okay, they grow into different distances, some of them a bit more close, some a bit more further away. I think those are the shadows will be for my leaves here. I think I'll put a larger leaf the opposite direction to have that balance. And some smaller, distant greens are going to come up somewhere there. And I think that depth now, instead of a violet, could also have some more green. And I think I'll build up some lighter greens there as well, but that might be a nice starting point for it to develop in the green direction. Okay, this might be too long, I think. I think that's dark purple, might be an old tree on the wood on the floor, maybe a branch. Okay, so I'm still following those patterns of earlier patterns I've developed. Okay, some of the lights. So dark greens are. Anything else could come here? Okay, maybe stop with that. That's might be too extra. Let's keep them there a little bit more hidden, so the pattern doesn't come up too similar. Okay, right. Dark greens are done. So once my darker greens are done, I can go for some fresher, lighter green. I'll go for some ochre, some white, maybe even try a bit of yellow, cadmium yellow with some fresh green, fresh emerald green. And now the yellows, sorry, the yellowy green, or greeny yellow, need to be still darker than our flowers, much darker. So even if it's quite sunny and much more happier type of green, I'll need to make sure it's a darker tone or kind of medium tone. This is more bolder, lighter green. So it's almost like highlights on my leaves and stems. So I'll just use it sparingly because we will have some medium tones in between as well, which hopefully will happen naturally afterwards. So tiny bit more water so my paint flows easily. And I'll go over some of the bit more. Okay, that looks too light. Maybe I'll do a color in between. Maybe this bolder, lighter green could come slightly later. Okay, so that color looks still light, still quite bold. I want it to be light, but I don't want it to be too strong. I think I could make my sponge. I want to be able to rub the colors gently. So if I'll rinse my sponge, I can just remove that color. Almost like from there. Oh, my greens are still wet there. So they're lifting all the greens, darker greens there. Okay, I need to come back to them afterwards. Right, let's come back to the medium tones here. Okay, it smells like they have dried, but they haven't. No problem. So that light green is not actually light, it's actually medium. And again, I'm looking for rhythm. I'm not going to go for every light petal I have on the photograph. I'm going to try to create interesting points, maybe tops of the some of the young leaves, maybe not follow them through till the end, going further into the stem or go further into the soil even. But if I'll find some of the beginnings and ends or bends, but I also need to be careful. I think I'm going a little bit similar in widths. As much as the leaves are the same in size, that rhythm of the marks will be too boring, will be too repetitive. This one turned one way, another one slightly different. How that just the tops of them, of the leaves, just bend gently. I think that's all need to be done with a smaller brush as well. To make some of these leaves alive. I think that group of leaves is going to stay slightly dark in comparison to that central one. Maybe just a small amount. To see how the light is following it. And I think maybe here I do need to go slightly braver and add slightly more light here. Again, there's an opportunity for me to use a bigger brush, sorry, a smaller brush to define some lines of light a bit more. Let's just carry on as they are. Okay, so I'm reasonably tentative about how much light I'm adding. I know I can easily add more or easily overwork it. That's a lovely little green. Okay, let's work into a group of light green, maybe for the back. Again, I need to be careful not to overdo the details. I'm more interested into the whole feel of them, and even if they'll stay quite choppy. The proportion of these shapes is slightly smaller. Now we've got a bit more light, and I think I can go even lighter because some of my flowers at the back will have a base of lighter green to them, almost like turquoisey blue, pale. I think my camera doesn't quite pick up that turquoisey green. I'm going to, it just looks very light. That's more of a green. I'll adjust it in a moment. Let's just make it slightly interesting developing here. So I can paint some extra whites on top of these areas as well. Right, anything else? No, I think I'm ready to go for some turquoisey colors for the flowers. Now it means that I need to really clean my brush, as I don't want to have any ochre or yellow in it. I want to go for more fresh emerald green and for more phthalo blue probably, and some white. Right, so let's mix some turquoisey color for some of the shadows of the petals of our snowdrops. So emerald green, which you can't for some reason see. So now I have the turquoisey color. So I have my green and phthalo blue with some white. And I'm going to find some of the shapes, not the lightest on my petals, but where I might have got some of the maybe medium tone, maybe somewhere I can kind of see reflections of them part of the reflections of the sky. I can go over these areas and make them whiter. So they're not in full white shapes. I want to create the glow of the flowers, that delicate nature of them. Okay, I'll do some big shapes, big kind of strokes, which this brush will give me, and maybe use a different brush for the same color, but different type of strokes, different petals. Different petals, widths. Or maybe more finer lines of them. Could be done with a different brush. Okay, that's what I want to have. Some of these shapes are a little bit tired because I've been going around with some violets and they're not so bold. Okay, that's a bit better. Good, now I can see some of those flowers much more stronger. They're standing out in the foreground as well. So maybe if you're brave, you might be able to paint a couple of, maybe a group of snowballs in your own time. Maybe just give it a try. Painting, just some sketching. And the strokes now will be also forming my petals, not just where I'm painting. I think the strokes will define the character as well. Okay, I'll do tiny more work. Some of the shapes here. Again, going in the middle ground, so my flowers shouldn't be as precise. There's somewhere there. Maybe between the leaves we can just see some of them. And then finally on the background, I think that lighter green could go with more of a turquoisey, replaced with some of that turquoise. And the lighter green will now become the fresher leaves patterns. Just trying to see if I've balanced enough. Don't want them to stand out too much on their own. Okay, maybe somewhere here. I think after that I'm ready to change my brush for different strokes. Oh, that's a lovely, quite like that now, extra nice. As some of the groups maybe split a tiny bit more lower. That's nice. Now I'd like to do some accents of light tone at the back and then focus, so there will be still semi-abstract as a shape, more foggy, so then I can focus on the foreground and start bringing some more defined details to the petals and kind of those lovely bent stems. So if I'll go for my lighter version of this turquoisey color I had, and let's just put a couple of strokes, maybe a bit more water so the strokes are smooth. Okay, if I also have some more diluted color, not overly thick, it will also gives me an opportunity to, if it will dry slightly darker, so it means that then they're not going to at the end stay too light. So let's create some of the patterns, little busy areas, little clutters of light. Maybe very little here, maybe a tiny bit more this side. And again, the strokes, that lovely round shapes of them, help to create the character of the flowers in a group. See, some of those ones will start from a little bit more forward. If some of the petals will dry as they are, I will need to tone them down, make them less bold and light, make them a tiny bit darker. But for the moment, I think they're okay. So I'm putting a couple of strokes at a time and sitting kind of leaning away from the easel to see if that's a type of finish I want for the background. Silhouette, yeah. Are the colors are too repetitive? Are the shapes are too repetitive? A bit more darker here. And I can put maybe a lighter, well, against the dark background, it will look quite a light tone, but I'm mixing quite a dark color here. Trying to squint my eyes and look at the shapes. Okay, so those are slightly darker tones, so I can put those flowers in the shadow. Quite like that lovely blue. Maybe I can add it to some of my larger flowers. Okay, that's quite similar to my existing turquoise. I feel if I make it tiny bit more darker. No, I think I don't need to go any darker. I think that's okay. Maybe a dark one here to kind of follow it again, tiny bit through. And maybe edit for some insignificant areas. Some small, just maybe from somewhere at the bottom right corner of some of the, maybe there's a darker tree somewhere here creating a shadow. Okay, so some of the coolness is there now. Yeah, quite like that. Right, then let's bring some of the lighter tones now to the key flowers. I'll still go for a white, an off-white of blue or an off-white of turquoise. I'll be just changing it as I'll do some strokes here. Okay, I've got a nice narrow part of the petal, and then it's spreads into little veins. Maybe I can show that character, but also I want to keep the full petal together without breaking it too much. So let's see if that's too hairy, then I can simplify it. And just gently smudge these hairy ends. I want them to be soft. Okay. Once I work out a couple of petals and a couple of shadows, I think I'm going to be just repeating that in different areas. So the sponge washes it off better. I think I might load my another brush with that original light purple, violety, ochre tone. I think that's quite nice to see as some of the shadows. See if I overwork it. Okay, a bit more cooler in the violet. I can shape it back. So that three-dimensional effect will be there. Same time, I need to think of the white appearing to be white. I don't want it to look like the leaves background, leafy shape. Okay, maybe I'll just leave this one for the moment. Something not quite there yet. Okay, let's leave it to dry and come back to it. Let's work for some of the more definite highlights and maybe keep it this simple silhouettes. Yeah. Edge. Nice. Also very often, if we don't break our petals into too many colors, sometimes it's better because they read better as shapes, rather than them having a lot of texture and a lot of color present. So I think I'm gonna go with my bolder highlights first and then work my way from there. Okay, so some light next to the top. Then top and see how the petal is developing. Shape. Okay, so some of these ones are just behind. I can see some light, but maybe it's not as bold as it appears. Let's have a tiny bit of a shadow here. So that's when the changes in the painting are going to be much slower, as those nuances. Oh, that's a lovely tone. I like that. As the change is not going to be as quick now. That's much better. I think I can just touch it up with background color and tidy it up with using its silhouette. Give it slightly more weight. Before the highlights. So the subtones here, I think, are going to do crucial changes. Okay, just mixing those colors a bit more gently. Okay, that's good. Swapping brushes. And again, let's go for that highlight a little bit more thicker in paint, so it will start singing. It's going to be lighter, but not totally white. Nice. And slightly more, maybe high, okay, maybe too bold, but slightly lighter, that reflection of the light coming from underneath of it. It's reflecting the petal, which is over this wider one. Okay, let's make these shapes slightly bigger now as well. So they're flowing much more further. I think that's going to go slightly longer. That's when I know that the other side will need to go slightly longer as well. Okay, let's again go for some more highlights. Simple shapes. Top on the top. Quite like some of the gentle suggestions for the petals without too intensive details. So get a very repetitive stroke there. Right, let's go on the middle ground with the highlights. Maybe liven it up with just exciting strokes without breaking into individual leaves. So that's the only danger, painting some of the tiny flowers zoomed in, as I'm doing today, is starting to lose them. Sense of big shapes, and I think that's going to too much. Let's do that section again. Okay, so some of the larger whites are done. I'm going to introduce some now happy dots for the whites. Charge it with extra reflecting areas. Fresh white. Maybe a little line, maybe a little dot, maybe a little continuation, narrow shape. And I'm looking for a pattern to give me some indication of character. This looks too dark, little dot. I think some of the shapes here could be taken by the background to make them silhouette of the petals here, a bit more delicate. So I'll keep going, bearing in mind that I'll need to come back and get some of these shapes. Just not too sure that I like them. These 4 petals are looking too similar. I need some variation to them. Right, let's go back to my highlights. Otherwise, I'll get carried away and lose my feel for the flowers. I want to have that spring, gorgeous light. Tiny, tiny bit more with the white lights. And I'll go back to the greens and start defining also some of the silhouettes of them. Petals. Oh, I think this one could have been longer. Yes. That's what it should have been. And so is this one. I think it just been trimmed. Maybe been eaten, or might have been pecked by a bird. Something's happened to its edge. It's not as perfect. Right, any other long? Let's find some where that's going to be too long. Okay, I'll wash my sponge. It's gonna be too long. Let's find that character long petals. Like this one. It's curling, maybe it's just finding its strength to open up even more than it's already opened. I think that's maybe partially open flower, partially we can see the middle of it. I think might have been opened up because of its leaves slightly different. That strength of light is becoming more effective. I also need to tidy up some areas of the petals where they look a little bit hairy, a bit more fluffy. I need to make sure that start unite within its every shape rather than breaking it down. I think the color's dried on this and it's starting to look even more interesting. That's good. And I think now I can, it's dried here, I can do a little curve. It's come out slightly wide, delicate pattern didn't happen. I keep topping up some lighter tones, and they're keeping up drying slightly darker, so that's a bonus. It means that I can create extra depth. Right, it looks a little bit messy here, so let's find differentiation for these repetitive patterns. Maybe I'll put a bit of depth here as well. Okay, tiny bit more shadows to put a better highlight. Okay, maybe just leave it for now, let it dry. It's a bit smudgy. Come back to that. Right, any other distinctive shapes? Or any bolder whites? Maybe just semi-triangle type of character strokes. That type of triangle. I think that's better. I think that's what this one needs, maybe. That type of mark, that type of elongated shape to have more distinctive bluebell, almost like symbol pattern. Okay. Now I'm going to look for the foreground flowers and try to spot any other kind of, I want to put some of the darker blues anywhere in between them, because the shadows surrounded them were quite dark. Yes, I'll work with some more, I can work with some more blue greens, but also the leaves can reflect some cooler strokes. Maybe it will be the light from the clouds or between the trees, so they don't have to be all green and yellow, or maybe just little glimpses of light. That will also balance a very bold whites. Maybe I'll use part of the veins. Again, little happy dots. Section of the leaves might have them. Okay, again, there's that immediate connection. And then I'll be ready for highlights of the yellows on top of the green. Okay, maybe again this one is a little too strong. Too much information of what's happening to it. But it's more suggestive like that is much more pleasant. quite like these little gaps of light. Maybe that's what I need to get, as well as playfulness of the light. So I'm not following each individual stem. I'm looking for balance of marks of light. That's it. So now the petals do not strike me. The foreground flowers don't strike me as too lonely. Okay. And let's come back to a couple of background tones, just to sharpen some of these petals as well. On the hand, I could do it after I've done my greens, maybe a bit of both. So let's say that as a better looking petal, and maybe even at its ear point, I can shape it. Okay, and again, I'll now go with this darker color, maybe for some of the corners of the petals, maybe a little bordering light to sharpen them, seeing the silhouette slightly stronger, tidy some of the silhouettes. Okay, that's where I definitely wanted to do a bit more sharpness. Tidy the form. And maybe here as well. So I'm not painting anything specific there. I'm working into sharpness of the background, or sorry, sharpness of the petals, and that will do my perception. That will play on the perception of the background. Okay, this is not an even line. Define this shape a tiny bit more. Okay, this one as well, gone. I'm not outlining the whole petal. I'm just touching it, some of the borders. So if I ended up with a similar darkness here, for example, I need to make it even within that shadow. I need to make variations of what could be slightly dark and what could be slightly going into medium tones. Lovely. That's a nice shadow there, but I might just define it even more because it's close to some of my darks. Oops, something running now. A stronger tone, and I'm nearly there, nearly ready for my highlights on the green. And I'll be finishing maybe something slightly darker on my woodland right at the back. So far I've done very little to it. Maybe trees to add a bit of depth to some of them. Again, that rhythm of lines need to be carefully thought through. Put some light second paint. Let's just wipe my brush. So something in between. So it doesn't tell me exactly, this is just plain shapes of tree trunks. I want a bit more, maybe because there's some dry leaves, they get into groups of light. Maybe there is actual light within them, behind the trees. Maybe just gone a little bit too light here. I like that darker line, but now it's looking too wide, too continuous. I don't want it from one end to another. I want it disappearing. That's it. That's much better. Much better. Fantastic. Right, highlights for the greens. I'll go for my soft, flat, small brush. On the other hand, I could do with a round brush as well for some. Maybe I'll start with that one because I need to do some of the overly shaped lines. I have some light green here already. Let's just try it first. Let's see if it's light enough. Maybe tiny bit more white and tiny bit more yellow, because now against all my medium tones, that will stand out beautifully. A tiny bit of lighter green patterns on the flowers as well, but might come back to some of them with some darker greens afterwards. Okay, I started with the stems and I moved into somewhere else. Let's come back to stems and leaves. Moved into details on the petals where I spotted some lights. Let's find some tips of the leaves. So the shorter leaves, the younger leaves, just coming through the soil, will have a lighter end to them. It's good, but they're too parallel. I don't want it to be parallel. I want a slight angle to it. Maybe a little curve. And that lovely highlight will be within that shape. Let's go for some wider strokes as well. Especially now I can go a bit more braver. Now I know the rest of the highlights and the rest of the medium tones. I can go quite happily. Much bolder. Okay, some nice light catching. Grassy field. These are two a bit parallel, so I need to break it down with something in between them. That's better. That balances that. Any other tops of the young leaves? And that one is there. That one's got a little twist to it. Any other shapes coming out from the soil in a different way? Maybe a little too exuberant twist here. Right, nice. There's something else here. Okay, this two becoming too parallel as well. I like its light, but not its direction. And that could go much more pointed, and then it's also varied then. Okay, any highlights here on the top? A little dots of light. I don't want to over paint. Oh, maybe there's some extra light in here. That's nice. Now it's that petal is not so jumpy, not so bold in its highlight. Right, some more twisty stems for the flower heads. Might see them, might not, but that color is overall present. And kind of curl shape comes here and there. More of again as a symbol than exact following. Okay, and I think I'm ready for now some of the flower heads, little green buds which hold the petals together. Some of them gone slightly lost. So if I'll put a tiny bit of emphasis on them, some will need to be slightly darker, some of them could go and have a highlight. Most of them are quite dark. And I think I need a tiny bit more last moment dazzle of the strokes for some extra shadows maybe. I think I'm good with highlights for the leaves. I think I'm going to keep them as they are, but a couple of more shadows now to tidy some of these leaves, which start in some places slightly mingle in the tones. So I'm using some indigo look kind of type of color. Double checking anything else here. Any other shadows might need simplifying, or I think that was just a bit of an abrupt broken line, so let's turn it to a bit more simple shape. Same as this one. And then anything here in the foreground. Last couple of strokes. Last couple of strokes of light. I'm gonna go for some warm colors now. Maybe some ochre and some crimson. Or maybe some extra highlights here. Now again, I know how much light the leaves, so it might need how much the petals provided. So that forest floor is really next to us. We can see the depths under the leaves, but we also can still see some of those beautiful highlights in between. Okay, that line of a shadow could be broken gently as well. Right, I can see I can do a tiny bit more highlights on the leaves, right in the back. Maybe bring some of that tiny bit more light. That's kind of golden ochre. That's better. It brings some extra sunshine there. Might also show us a more united look. All that volume of details. Maybe nothing there, and maybe a couple of strokes across. Let's try it much lighter. And I'm going to stop before I'll start maybe overworking this. Just a little softer end of this line. And I think I'm done.